This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, welcome everyone to another OCP Tap session. So today we have a presentation from Mark. Let's introduce our speaker, Mark. Mark received his master's degree in computer science at ETH Zurich, where he had the privilege to be part of the last generation of software engineers students taught by Turing Award winner Nicholas Wirth. For the last 20 years, he is now following his passion for designing and implementing high-quality system software, ranging from embedded systems to server infrastructure. Most recently, Mark is working on network-based time synchronization, yay, as part of the Adrian Perig's project CS-ION at ETH Zurich, with the ambition of developing the fundamental components of a more secure and dependable internet architecture based on well-founded theoretical principles. So I met Mark in during ITSF, and I asked him if he would be willing to give a presentation of CPTAP, and he agreed. So it's great to have you here, Mark. So with no further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ahmed. And thanks everyone for having me. I'm trying to share my screen. Let's see whether this works this time as well. Let's see. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, perfect. So
Let's go back. Like we're back at the. I think you did. Yeah.
is everything okay?
Yes, this is the page,
Okay.
but then it went back to the web page. So
Okay, um, so let's get started. Today, I would like to present G-SINC, a secure and dependable global time synchronization architecture. This is joint work between the network security group here at ETH Zurich and Christoph Lenzen from CISPA in Saarbrücken in Germany. I work at as already mentioned, at the network security group in Zurich, and there we are concerned with many aspects of networking, of course, but we are not actual time synchronization specialists. So for me, this is a fantastic opportunity actually to learn from you experts here. So I would like to ask you to just raise your voice even during the presentation if something is unclear or if you have to point out a mistake that I'm telling, and it's no problem to have interruptions during the presentation. And otherwise, I also hope that we will have some time in the end for some discussion, comments, and questions. To start off, I thought it would be a good thing to actually review today's NTP architecture, not because I assume that anyone needs such a repetition in this audience, but just to have a common framework for the rest of the presentation. So at the core of NTP, we have the so-called primary time servers at the stratum 1, which receive their reference time most often from GNSS systems. Then this reference time gets distributed via higher strata servers to the actual end hosts. And it has to be stated at this point that this is actually one of the major successful architectures in today's internet. Companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, and also the Open NTP Pool project are synchronizing, based on this architecture, literally billion of devices. But of course, there are not only consumer level devices but also critical infrastructure systems, such as the ones used in telecommunications or finance, energy production and distribution, or applications like environmental monitoring. And for these kinds of application, we have an obvious problem in this architecture, in that we have these GNSS systems at the root of the time distribution tree. I think it's well known that GNSSs are prone to having problems with equipment failure, misconfiguration, but also attacks against availability and accuracy in the form of jamming and spoofing. And experts in the field have been warning about this problem for over a decade now. Even the Common Trade Press has picked up the topic. And at the same ITSF that Ahmad just mentioned, I was actually surprised and also to learn how much this is also a major topic even in an international conference. But of course, there are not only technical problems with GNSS systems, but there is also recent work going into the study on how natural phenomena like solar superstorms could impact our satellite infrastructure, with the result that such superstorms are surprisingly likely to happen in one of the coming decades, and we should actually start to prepare for such events. But also at ITSF, I actually learned that it doesn't have to be that dramatic. Presenters from the Nordic countries reported on icy cell towers that have problems getting receptions, or even pieces of ice that are falling back from the falling down from the cell tower to receivers mounted at lower levels of the cell tower, and thereby shattering the equipment and making it unusable. Facing all these concerns, governments have issued mandates to protect critical infrastructure against disruption to GNSS systems, including this widely discussed executive order, US executive order from 2020. In these mandates, equipment manufacturers, but also service providers and operators are actually encouraged to intensify research and development in alternative technologies. And aiming to join these efforts, we at the Network Security Group started to look into how we could contribute to this field of global dependable clock synchronization. And in the beginning, we came up independently with a design that looks very similar to this one, which is called multi-source common view disciplined clocks that has been proposed by NIST and is currently, as I understand, is currently being tested for the US stock market as a fallback system to GNSS-based, purely GNSS-based synchronization. And how it works is that independent time servers are exchanging via a central cloud service offsets to a common satellite reference, and by exchanging those offsets, it is possible for the time servers to derive relatives of offsets amongst themselves and use this information to keep synchronization, even if the absolute synchronization from the satellites fails. But in analyzing such systems, we came to the conclusion, we even built up prototypes that were quite similar to this one, but we came to the conclusion that to have a truly fundamental improvement in terms of reliability and security for the synchronization, we actually have to make a step back. Because even here in such a solution, we have a dependence on the satellite systems for retrieving the offsets. And then we have also these central cloud servers with which could be a single point of failure. And that's why we went back to the drawing board, basically starting from very principled design constraints. And here we had 4 points that we identified as crucial for our future design. We wanted to have a completely decentralized architecture without any global root of trusts. And then we wanted to achieve a very high degree of resilience to attacks and extreme conditions. So this was our first priority, more than accuracy or precision of the synchronization. Transparency and resilience to attacks and extreme conditions is our major concern, at least in the first phase of our project. Then we, of course, want to still use GNSS systems for their superior accuracy and also cost effectiveness, but we don't want to depend perpetually on their availability. And as a last point, we want our system to be implementable as a backward compatible active standby solution for existing time synchronization architecture. So we want to have we have the hope of having a practical impact with our work, and for that we see that it is necessary that we can somehow deploy our solution in an incremental way on top of already existing architectures. So we came up with the following basic design. At the core, we have the so-called core time servers. These are the primary time servers in the traditional NTP architecture. And like in the NTP architecture, we maintain a so-called local synchronization process where these core time servers retrieve reference time from GNSS systems and then preferably from multiple constellations, and then in the ideal case can compute the UTC median from these reference clocks and influence the local clock steering based on them, and then from there distribute this reference time further down the time distribution tree. But we don't want to stop here. As a second element of our solution, we also introduce the so-called global synchronization in our design. And there we do actual synchronization, peer-to-peer synchronization over the network at global scale with all other core time servers in the core time synchronization group. So by doing that, we can synthesize in this global synchronization a second reference time that can be used, first of all, to compare against the reference time retrieved via the GNSS systems. And by doing this comparison, we can detect inconsistencies with the GNSS time and maybe just fulfill the simple function of just alerting based on possible inconsistencies between the GNSS time and what was retrieved over the network as a reference time. In a second phase, we also anticipate that we use the global, the network time synchronized over the network also for as a reference time to actually influence the local clock steering of the primary time servers. So if you look at this design, this looks quite nice and it fulfills all our properties up till now. But of course, we have to be extra careful in this situation because first of all, we introduce a new level of resiliency because we are introducing a new reference clock that we can use to synchronize time globally, but we also open up a new source of problems, namely the network-based synchronization. And in the remainder of the presentation, I will show how we attack this problem of making the network-based synchronization as secure and dependable as possible. To do so, we work with a two-pronged approach. The first one is we attack the problem on the application layer, but then also on the network layer. On the application layer, we are using this fault-tolerant clock synchronization algorithm initially proposed by Jennifer Welch and Nancy Lynch in the late 80s. This synchronization algorithm has the property that it is able to tolerate failures of just under 1/3 of the participating processes. We call these processes Byzantine Byzantine processes, meaning that they can 1/3 of them, or up to 1/3 of them, can basically behave arbitrarily, be it that they are faulty somehow or that they are acting actively malicious. And to give a quick impression how this algorithm works in a little bit more detail, I have here some pseudocode. I don't want to show every detail, but just want to highlight a few aspects. It's, of course, a periodic process where we, from each peer, we measure to each, in each round, we measure a path-aware entropy offset to each other peer. So it's really a peer-to-end synchronization, peer-to-peer. Here it says path-aware entropy offset. We can, for now, ignore the path-aware aspects. We can, we will discuss it at a later point in the presentation, but we basically collect all these entropy offset measurements in an array and sort the array, and then we do the actual Byzantine fault-tolerant midpoint calculation, how it is called. And this works like we basically throw away the F lowest values in this sorted array of offset measurements and the F highest values in the array. And then we take the remaining endpoints in the array and calculate the midpoint. F here in this calculation is the assumed number of faulty nodes, and it's chosen such that if we have n participating nodes in the synchronization, n should be greater or equal than 3f plus 1. And this global offset, which is also sometimes called an approximate agreement on the offset value across the network, we can then use in this sketch here to adjust the local time, and then from there drive the synchronization across the higher strata. We have been lucky enough to basically publish this system in a conceptual way at the SRDS conference earlier this year, and here I want to reference you a version of our paper that we have uploaded to arXiv, where we also include, on top of the fundamental concept, we also include a formal analysis of this algorithm, and they show quite interesting properties, which I want to summarize here quite quickly. In these mathematical proofs, we can show that in the worst case scenarios where the GNSS systems basically can behave arbitrarily, we are still able to maintain a global skew of the local clocks in the primary time server that is upper bounded by 4 times delta. And delta is the maximum expected offset measurement error over the network. So we do these offset measurements over the network, and we can have an assumption how much will be the maximum measurement error by doing these measurements. And if we take this maximum, we multiply it by 4, and then we get our upper bound for the skew across the network. This has the nice property that improving these measurement errors, which I will come back to later in the presentation, also will automatically improve the global skew in the system in worst case conditions. And in best case or normal conditions, the global skew is bounded by the fourfold of the local clock's maximum drift. And so if we buy very good local clocks, we get also a very good skew under normal conditions. So much of our work on the application layer. We are using this new Byzantine, or at least in this context, new Byzantine fault-tolerant clock synchronization algorithm. But of course, there is also network layer attacks that we have to consider, especially in the area of time synchronization. Of course, you all know that even minimal routing asymmetries can have huge effects, and on-path attackers are able to introduce delay attacks by basically just being on the path and having to do little else. To give a framework to think about all these problems, I would like to reference this paper here, where the authors last year in the communication of the ACM actually studied the effect of routing attacks on the network layer for critical infrastructure systems in a number of application areas. And they came to the conclusion that the risks of routing insecurities have been significantly underestimated for critical infrastructure systems. And they actually advise the audience of this publication to design the system and design in an actual combination of application layer and network layer solutions. That's exactly our goal here. Up till now, I talked a little bit about our application layer solution, and now I want to dive into network layer solutions that we are trying to address here. And our major contribution here is that we are using the SIAN Internet architecture. SIAN is a project that has been developed for over 10 years in our research group here at ETH Zurich. And SIAN is actually a clean slate internet architecture that has been designed from the ground up with a focus on reliability and security. In SIAN, network failures and misconfiguration, which are often a problem in today's BGP routed internet, cannot result in global outages. We have trust and isolation boundaries that avoid such global outages. And we can also counteract routing attack in that they are prevented by design. Unfortunately, I don't have nearly enough time to go into all the details of SIAN. So I would like to reference you also to this communication of the ACM paper. And for people who are even more interested in the details, we have also published earlier this year quite a complete book about covering most aspects of SIAN, including formal verification and also application of this infrastructure. But fortunately for our purposes, SIAN is much more than just an academic concept. It turns out that it is surprisingly simple for internet service provider to provide their customers, to offer their customers native SIAN connectivities. Basically, internet service providers only have to deploy a few components, servers for to support the SIAN control plane, and then they have to also deploy a border routers that are able to talk the SIAN routing protocol. And in doing so, since this is quite easy, and we are observing that more and more in ISPs are offering this native SIAN connectivity, and there is a growing deployment of production connectivity for SIAN. Especially in Switzerland, we have the situation that we have as one of the major application of this SIAN deployment is the secure Swiss finance network, which is a project that was launched last year by the Swiss National Bank and SIX, Swiss banking services provider. And this network basically connects all the major banks and the Swiss National Bank, and they exchange all their security critical transaction over this networking infrastructure, avoiding exactly those routing attacks and insecurities at the network layer we briefly touched upon earlier in the presentation. And of course, this network is based on SIAN. On top of these routing security aspects, we have a few more aspects we can leverage for our time synchronization project. One is the current internet architecture basically works in that we have independent networks called autonomous systems that are, so to speak, stitched together by the BGP protocol, which distributes then the routing information. In SIAN, we still have these autonomous systems. In this topology, autonomous systems are depicted as small circles with letters in them. But in contrast to today's internet, we have a second structure overlaid to them, and these are called isolation domains, or depicted in colored ovals here. We have 5 isolation domains that we see here. And isolation domains are basically common trust environment for a subset of autonomous systems. And one of the services in such an isolation domain is a so-called trust root configuration, which is part of a public key infrastructure maintained by SIAN. And this trust root configuration, among other things, identifies a number of special ASs that are called core ASs. In this topology, AB would be a core AS, but also I and J, K, M and L, and etc. And this trust root configuration, we can leverage them in that they actually already define a group membership for these core AESs. And in leveraging this cryptographic framework to define these group memberships, and then also we have predefined roles, processes, and policies that govern how this group membership is maintained. We can leverage all this to have also the group membership for our core time synchronization group, where we do the peer-to-peer synchronization, the global. So we can avoid many problems of other peer-to-peer protocols that try to operate without any global root of trust, so that we can, by avoiding, for example, civil attacks, in that we have a predefined framework for defining group membership. And on top of that, we also have multipath or path-aware networking support in Cyan. This works as follows. Let's assume that a host in ASA wants to send a message to an end host in ASM. In today's internet, if the packet gets sent out to the network actually decides how this packet gets routed to M. But in Cyan, every end host has full path transparency and also control, meaning that it can decide over which paths the packet should travel towards M. So A is able to select a path over I and J, but also this one or this one. And what's especially noteworthy is that if the packet arrives at M, the path information over which the packet traveled towards M is actually contained in the packet itself at the network protocol layer. So M will be able to retrieve this information, actually reverse the path and send it back over the exact same path to A. Let's say it is an NTP response, and thereby avoiding many of the routing asymmetries that we detect in today's internet. And with that, of course, we have the opportunity and possibility to actually optimize network measurements quite a bit, because we have guaranteed routing symmetry. And we can also use all those paths in parallel to do network measurements and compare the values. And with this background, we are now able to describe what we mean by path-aware NTP offset measurements that we used to define the global synchronization protocol. I have again a short sketch about how we do that. First of all, if we want to synchronize with a peer P, and we want to do a path-aware NTP offset measurement to this peer, we first of all query the Cyan control plane for a number of paths towards this peer P. In typical topologies like the ones of the current internet, we can assume that we get about a few dozens of paths among core ASs to choose from. And here we choose, we have a path selection strategy that favors especially these joint paths towards this peer P. And then we do normal NTP measurements over every path that we get from the Cyan control plane in parallel. We collect those measurements, and in the end, we return the median of all these measurements as one measurement towards this peer P. So we have on the application layer this fault-tolerant clock synchronization algorithm, and then on the networking layer, the substrate of a really reliable and secure networking layer that with multipath support that should support all our synchronization properties that we are aiming for. And now to evaluate this approach, it's of course a little bit difficult to do on a global scale, at least in the early stages of the project. And therefore we opted to do large-scale simulations, but with realistic topologies that are derived from today's internet topologies. And what we did in this experiment here is we deployed 2,000 core servers across this realistic topology in a simulated system. And we assumed 10% of faulty nodes among those 2,000 primary core servers. These 10% of faulty nodes had the property that they were introducing arbitrary delays when forwarding packets that came across their autonomous system, and thereby, of course, influencing introducing asymmetries in the network measurements. And we did this over 40 days. And here you see the CDF of the differences to real time after those 40 days. And as you can see that even with 10% of faulty nodes in the network, we still can maintain over 99% of nodes basically in perfect synchronization with real time, independent of the path selection strategy. As you can see, certain path selection strategies perform better than others, but independent of what we select, we are over 99%. If we go up to 20% of malicious nodes, we can still maintain 94% of perfectly synchronized nodes after 40 days. Out of 2,000 nodes. And then we also wanted to do an experiment where we completely turn off the reference clocks in our system. And this experiment, we did it over an entire year, just to have a very long reference point. And we did it with about 500 servers in the core synchronization group, and each of these servers is represented by a small gray dot in this graph. You see here at time 0, all the time servers are perfectly synchronized, and there is no difference to real time in the beginning. Then, as already mentioned, we turn off all the reference clocks, the GNSS systems, and they are then all primary time servers are then basically free running. And indeed, we see that there is a free drift period up to a certain degree, and this certain degree is determined by one parameter that we have in the global clock synchronization, that is this expected measurement error over maximum measurement error over the network, because it doesn't make sense to correct based on measurement networks if we are still in the measurement error. So, but as soon as we go beyond this expected maximum measurement error, the global synchronization kicks in, and you see that the group of time servers starts to be perfectly synchronized over the course of the entire year, within the range of this global cutoff value that we introduce in our algorithm. And what you can also see, the entire group of servers, 500 servers, of course drifts toward some direction, but this is simply an artifact of the random distribution of the local clock drifts that we are assumed in this simulation. So it's obviously we end up after this 1 year with a skew of plus minus 1 millisecond, but which is maybe for many applications too much, but we are at least satisfied with this result, because we see, okay, we have now a really good basis to start optimizing and see how we can get better from this while still maintaining all the security and reliability properties. So to summarize what we did in this project is basically G-SINC introduces a secure and dependable global clock synchronization approach as a backward compatible extension to current time synchronization architecture, because we are basically just adding to current NTP-based deployments. We achieve this by, first of all, on the application level, by employing a new Byzantine fault-tolerant clock synchronization algorithm, and on the network layer, we make use of the path-aware SIN Internet architecture. To give you a brief outlook about what is currently happening and in the future, we are currently building out this system as a first end-to-end implementation of G-SINC, and integration testing in a global research testbed, SIN lab, is planned to start next year. We are also actively working with students doing master thesis and bachelor thesis on this topic, and we are also looking for pilot partners in this, interested in applications in this area. Maybe a little bit more of interest for this group. We are currently using these GNSS receiver cards from Nuremberg, but we are of course also excited and looking forward to experiment with the time card. Especially the dual GNSS module will be very interesting for us because in a recent discussion with Sven and Thomas from NetTime Logic, we discussed, for example, an idea in which we could basically use one of those GNSS receiver modules in normal operation mode, and then we could use the second one to actually monitor the operation of the first one and thereby further increase the end-to-end transparency of our global time synchronization approach, which is one of our major concerns. Yeah, with that, I would like to give the floor back for possible questions and answer and receive your comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. So yeah, the floor is open for questions. Let's see. Anyone? Just unmute yourself. Looks everyone is muted. So if you have a question, or if you're shy, you can put it in the chat and then I can ask. No question yet? Let's give a warm-up question. Maybe I'll start with one. So let's say for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Perfect, Joseph. Go ahead.
O'Neill. Hi guys. Very, very nice, very interesting presentation. This is not really a question, it's more a reach out. I would really be interested in exploring ways that we could work together. So please reach out to me, Ahmed. I'm sure you have Mark's contacts and I know you have mine. So maybe you could put us together. That would be really interesting.
Sure. I think, Mark, you had your email in the first slide, right?
Yeah, I
Exactly.
missed the first slide. Excuse me, I was a bit late to the.
We can put this first slide back here. Just like, I mean, this is recorded anyways. So
Yeah.
Joseph is on you to reach out to.
Sure.
And
Thank you.
I'll do that as well, but
excellent.
in case I forget.
I try to scroll back to the first.
Yeah, here's Mark's
Let me
email.
see. And maybe try to share again the screen.
It was already there. It was.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So now I have to find the presentation. So here in the you can see my email. So it would be great to have.
Mark.
Excellent, captured. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
My question, Mark, is let's say for that dual GNSS, can you give us a little bit more details if possible? Like, let's say how you can increase the resiliency. Like, what are the options? How about that? Because one method is what you mentioned, but in general, what are the options?
Yeah, I mean, the initial motivation that I discussed with Sven and Thomas is currently we get basically a fully synthesized time from the GNSS module that is basically doing the pre-combination of the different constellations. and we get one time back as the synthesized GNSS time. And I was asking, do you guys know how this computation is done? And Sven mentioned that it is kind of a majority voting, but the details are not really documented there. And then and I'm working, especially Christoph Lenzen, who is the time synchronization specialist in our project and also very deep into the theory. He has always concerns of having intransparencies in the end-to-end synchronization, and he wants to really understand and model in his mathematical proofs every aspect of the synchronization. So he would be very happy if we could have actual the individual times from the individual constellation and then do the synthesis ourselves, or at least understand how it's happening. And so Thomas and Sven had this idea that we could put one module in transparency mode and receive just every measurement that we get from them. And we would connect both modules to the same antenna. So we would be also sure that we see the same jammed or spoofed signals, and then we could just use the one module for as we do it all the way. But we had also the information from which we could maybe infer if there are inconsistencies happening, jumps happening, whether how many signals are actually right now delivering values and how different those values are. So that we could attach some kind of a quality of service to a network, to a GNSS reading. So that was our basic idea for this project.
How about also, let's say, when you have the atomic clock sitting there, to do a comparison, because this was the initial idea I was thinking about, that I will do a covariance basically between each one of the GNSS receivers with the atomic clock, and then like I look for where I get the, let's say, smaller covariance, and then that will be basically the winner. And then the winner then will be used now to tune provide the precision to the clock.
But you would set both receiver modules to the same
No.
constellations?
It'll be two different constellations. Let's say one will be like
Okay.
on N1, one will be on L5, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's also an interesting idea. Yeah.
And then also between them, you
Yeah.
look at the covariance, and then
Yeah.
because covariance will not care about the offset, it will look for only the changes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have to be really careful about making sure that you had, I would suggest, not necessarily several, but two or three or more cesiums atomic clocks, in order to ensure that you calibrated the drift of those against each other and ensembled that synthetic signal so that you then had a very stable cesium signal so that you could use that to measure the drift of the GNSS and or the covariance.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about using the onboard
Yeah, I
rubidium to do that.
understand, but you're going to get drift from that, right? So
Yeah.
you have to be really careful about that. Even if it's disciplined, once you're going to get drift from it, and it's going to be locked to the GNSS signal that it's coming in from the constellation that is disciplining in that specific clock, right?
Yeah.
So it may be good to have essentially you're going to have off-board, ensembled multiple cesiums so that you've got a stable frequency platform that then is then used, if you like, as the reference signal for the GNSS. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other question? Well, hearing none.
I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
Since we are experimenting with multipath communication over the global network, I would assume that multipath is actually much easier to achieve within a data center. So do you have experience, or did you do experiments with multipathing within a data center? Or is this a topic
Well,
that
the
you
hierarchy we
didn't
have in a
explore?
data center is very clear. Like, I mean, you can have multipath if you decide so, because everything is
Mm,
unicast anyways,
mm,
and you have the architecture is relatively simple. I mean, you saw the publication and everything that went out like last 2 weeks. So basically, you have these every data center, every data hall. You have like basically four you have these rooms they call MPO. Every MPO has like four grandmasters. They're independent, and one of them is active. The other one can like basically get things reversed to have like this multi-path. But yeah, there will be multi-path in that sense of like going through the fabric, because that's not determined by us. That's determined by BGP and how like
mm,
packets are routed around.
mm, mm,
So, but then I don't know if that's going to give you more information, because it will be all like transparent clocks anyways.
mm, mm.
But
Yeah,
then, yeah, I mean, we can. There is no limitation. Like we can change things. We can have like I don't know, certain machines use different things at the same time. All four can work together. Right now, there is a best grandmaster clock basically algorithm that's BMCA, yeah, algorithm that is running. Which one should be in charge? But then we can always change that, and I don't know. We're open always to new things.
thanks. Interesting. And thanks also for the publications 2 weeks ago. I think
Oh, you're
they
welcome.
are very interesting. Yeah.
So, like, I mean, is there something like right now you can tell me like how you see like any benefit from this multi-path or something?
Yeah, just we basically want to avoid landing on a path, or landing exclusively on a path that is occupied by a non-path attacker over the network. So
So
we're
there is
doing
something that
measurements.
might. Sorry. Go ahead, go ahead. I thought you stopped for a
No, yeah,
second.
I just want to fan out, and therefore lowering the possibility to actually hit such an attacker. So that's the basic idea.
So something that is quite interesting we've been thinking about is uh, we assume all the transparent clocks are basically working. And I mean, in data hall, you can assume like I don't know, somewhere about let's say 5,000 of these transparent clocks switches are in that fabric. So statistically speaking, you can have let's say a transparent clock not working, or like as simple as like the ASIC, just for the ASIC, the configuration in ASIC was not flipped on, so you don't have correction fields. Correction field is zero. Or let's say the oscillator, because we never do synchronization on these transparent clocks. The oscillator is off by, I don't know, 500 ppm, whatever. It's just like misaligned something. So how can we detect that? Like, or basically, how can you detect rogue transparent clock?
Mhm,
So then different pathways can help with that. But right now,
mhm,
we don't have a way to actually monitor like the path. And we were thinking about like, hey, as we go through every hop and we have correction field, can we also store, let's say, the MAC address for that uh, switch, so then we can like see like what when path change. You know, because we also have this problem with like asymmetry, how we want to address asymmetry when things
mhm,
changes. Right now we're handling it with just filters, but
mhm,
then we can be proactive. Hey, when things change, then consider there's a change here, then like reset everything.
mhm,
So these, I think there is some hidden gem here, maybe like if
mhm,
we combine your work with whatever we have there,
mhm,
scope might be different, but principle I think are the same.
mhm.
So let's dig into it. I think it's pretty
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
because I
exciting.
think,
Very
sorry,
exciting. Sorry, Ahmed. No,
go
I
ahead.
just making a comment. I thought you'd finished, and please excuse me. Didn't did not wish to be rude. It's very,
No.
very exciting, and the work. I see a lot of synergies, as you're saying, Ahmed. For example, tracking the behavior over time of transparent clocks to see if they're effectively drifting, which is what you're saying, or going AWOL. and then using the multipath statements from Scion to give you information about the validity of that tracking mechanism. It's really, really interesting. I see a lot of areas here where these um, uh, two explorations can be essentially jammed together. Very, very nice.
I think combining this, like in the front line, combining this with BGP, like how can
Yeah,
you
exactly.
coexist with
I was very
BGP?
excited to see the AS structure. That's what I want to sync up with you for, Michael.
Yeah,
And Ahmed, you know my feeling about BGP and IPv6 in the core of a network, right? So
yeah,
this is really music to my ears, and I'm really excited by this. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, let's do that. Like, I think probably I should pull some of our BGP experts in a meeting, and then we
Uh-huh.
can discuss further. How can we
Yeah.
have, let's say, a test platform, let's say at least for
Well, that's what I'm
how
building.
we can,
So,
yeah.
let's talk.
Yeah, if you have that, then let's see how we can combine it with the work from Mark's team, and then we
Exactly.
can see like if we purposefully, make things go bad, can we survive, or how is that going to affect what's our sensitivity?
Mhm.
So I think this is great. Like let's do that like, proactively instead of like when you deal with this. I mean, we've been running for a while now. That's why we did the publication with confidence. We've been doing good, but the thing is like as more applications emerge, or let's say requirements will get tighter. When the requirements get tighter, let's say when I have the day that I have a customer that wants, let's say, I don't know, 2-digit nanosecond at that scale, then it's a
Mhm.
separate story because then I have to have my error bound within, let's say, 20 nanosecond or something because I'm giving them like 4.7 sigmas because they want to have P69. So then it's a separate story. Then every one of these things count. Like I cannot just go with a filter because this filter is giving me a bump like it's a 400 nanosecond. I don't care, like something changed. I don't care
I
because my
do.
customer is right now 10 microsecond, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. I get you.
Yeah,
It's very, very exciting though to see, Mark. I doff my hat to you. Security from the ground up is not a typical telco behavior. Coming
yeah,
from the telco environment, I can tell you that. And what we've been building here in Vitrify in the UK is security, code as secure. I mean, secure code basically. So
yeah,
everything is secured from the ground up, and it's also embedding precise timing. So love to talk to you, and Ahmed, you know where I am in that, right? So
yeah,
it's really, really
yeah.
good.
Great, great, awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, we are
perfect.
at the top of the hour. Couldn't give you guys any minutes back. So
Sorry.
okay, great. So
Yeah.
next in 2 weeks we're gonna have someone from the name. Uh, it's from Power, as far as I remember. Let's quickly just tell you guys about it. Yeah, it's gonna be from Fred Steinhauser about time synchronization in power systems,
Oh, cool.
and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see you guys there. Nothing else. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Great.
Thanks
Okay.
again.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed.
You're welcome. Bye bye.